All right.
So let's look at that first one. The first one is the candle one. So all right. Okay, so on this one now, let's just go through this. The math is not hard, but I want to make sure you understand, and you might take a second look at this tonight. Just glance through it. Mainly what we're looking for is what are, I mean, how to do it is not going to be a problem, but what are they looking for in terms of the graders who are going to award the points? You know, what's the scoring guide look like? That kind of stuff.
Did you figure out the answers to any of our questions?
What's that?
Did you figure out the answers to any of our questions?
What do you mean?
Like how many questions are on it? What's a good
Oh,
score?
okay, yes.
What formula are they
So
going to provide for us?
so the number, oh, okay, the number of questions, I think it's 40. I think it's 40, but there is one thing I do want to tell you, and I'll reiterate this tomorrow. Okay, it's got to be quieter than this, please. So we're gonna start the multiple choice part tomorrow, the computer adaptive test. I'm gonna get you going on that one, and then about an hour after that one starts, I'm gonna open up a second session, which is gonna be the performance task session. Okay. On the performance task session, I asked a bunch of questions about this morning at a meeting, and on that one, whatever you see, it just pauses the test. You can go back and look at stuff again. So if we kind of recruit what we know about brain science here on this stuff, what you really should do, I think you're going to finish the first one tomorrow, most likely. I really do. I mean, I don't think it's going to take you. It's 2 parts.
So the 40 questions is just the first part?
Is the first part, yeah.
So there are like 80 questions?
No, second part is it's just going to be, second part will go faster. It's just going to be 1 or 2 performance tasks. Yeah, but you don't really have to write very much. It's not, this one will be, you guys are just going to kill it.
So are we doing it not just for math, but
No, next week you do English.
science?
No. Science is, they're the only ones that are S-back.
And is it just like first period we'll be doing it?
Or are we testing?
No, you'll be doing it all morning.
8 a.m. to lunch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so what I want you guys to do on this then is when you finish up the first one, go ahead and open up the second one and just kind of read through it and look at it. And here's why I think that's a good idea. Because then what brain science tells us is that your brains will think about this stuff. You know, I just recently read a book about this. Genius is inspirational ideas and ideas, kind of the aha moments, almost never occur when you're trying to make it happen, when you're consciously thinking about it. When they tend to happen is during downtime, when your brain's allowed to wander, which is why our school system, like why the Finnish school system is so good, because they build in a lot of that time during the day. And why ours is so bad, because we don't do that stuff. We'll talk more about that later. But anyway, the main thing is, I want you to have the opportunity for your brain to kind of reflect on this, just without you consciously even thinking about it. And then the next time you come in and look at it, you're going to be more prepared to, and you're going to need it, but let's just take every opportunity, so, yeah.
Where are we going to be on Wednesday?
Okay, well, I don't think that's a big deal. I think you just, if you're feeling the music stuff, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're feeling like you just want to keep going with this,
Go ahead.
yeah, you can. That's fine. But don't
rush.
Yeah, don't rush. Yeah, this is an important
So
test.
we have 8
One more time, I'm going to ask you. It's got to be a little quieter. There's just too much talk. I want to be recording this so people can go back and listen to it. You guys just have to be quiet today. I'm sorry. Tomorrow it'll be different. We won't be in here. You can work and it can be a little louder. But today it has to be really quiet. It's if you're feeling like that's a lot of math to do, and it is. If you're just feeling like you feel like this is just so simple, I can crank this out. It's no big deal. Then go for it. But otherwise, don't push it. We'll get you in some other time. And right.
So we have 8 to lunch, 2 for the problems.
Yeah, but it'll be fine. It really, I'm just telling you,
If we,
I've seen this
if, no,
before.
but if we're finished early, do we go to class, or we just go to
Most of our classes don't have anyone else in it.
Yeah, I would say,
Good to know.
I would, I mean, that's up to you. That's up to you. If you wanna just open the other one up and just reflect on it, think about it and relax, that's fine. If you wanna go to class, that's fine too, yeah.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
So we're gonna learn anything new this week?
No, nothing, no, I'm not gonna do anything while you guys read. I mean, I'll be administering tests anyway, so these guys will just.
Because it's gone,
Yeah.
so.
So we report to this class tomorrow, and then you'll send this to a lab or just next here? or-
Report here and then I'll say, yeah, okay. All right, so let's have a look at this one then. So, is that, where's the? Let's go. Okay, so what about this? Your friend Abby, let's just read through this here real quick. You guys looked at this yet?
Pizza?
A
You
little.
have looked at it a little bit, okay. So your friend Abby's making a movie, she's filming a fancy dinner scene, fancy. She has 2 types of candles on the table. She wants to determine how long the candles will last. She takes a picture, lights the candles, and then lets them burn for 1 hour. She then takes a second picture. You can assume that each candle burns at its own constant rate, all right? So first picture, here they are, candle A, candle B, here's second picture. And when it gives you, obviously gives you the data, right? So after 1 hour, start at 20, the tall one's 20, the short one's 10. After 1 hour, candle A is 16, and candle B, the short one, is 9, okay? You will use this information to help Abby think about the candles she might use for her film. Okay, so first part, candles A and B are lit at the same time. What will be the height in centimeters of each candle after 3 hours of burn? So, how are you gonna do that? Let's look at this information. So after 3 hours, what are the heights gonna be? Yeah, okay, good, so 4 and 7. So let's go down, what are they gonna be again? After 3 hours?
Is that
It's gonna be
including the 1 hour?
8 and 7.
8 and 7, right?
Wait, is that including the 1 hour?
Yeah, it is, yeah, they're just saying, so, right, so this is after 1 hour and after 3 hours. And why would that be the case? Because eventually we're gonna, and it might be good to even look through the whole thing first, right? One time, just read through the whole thing. Later on in here, they're gonna ask you, of course, to come up with a function where t is hours and h is height, right? So does that make sense then, that, 1 is one value of t, 3 is another value of t, etc., right? Okay, so let's go down and look at how that's scored, and then we'll come back up. Actually, I guess we could just stay down here the whole time. So, the rubric, this is really a simple one. The depth of knowledge isn't high on this one. This is just an answer. 1 point, the student provides both correct answers. Candle A will be 8 centimeters and candle B will be 7 centimeters. And then 1 point is to get them both right, 0 for anything else. Okay, okay, so what about part 2? Candles of each type were lit at the same time. Abby thinks that since candle A burns more quickly than candle type B, that it will burn out first. Julie thinks other. Candle B starts out much shorter. It will be the candle to burn out first. So now this is the part where we gotta really be careful on this. This is one, when they say this language, which candle will burn out first? So we're gonna answer that question, but what they want here is give a mathematical explanation to convince Abby and Julie of your solution. Clearly identify the quantities involved, right? So what are we gonna do with this then? The correct answer, it isn't a big deal, right? But it's not just the correct answer we're looking for.
So the thing is,
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. For later on today.
Okay, gotcha.
Should.
Okay. Here, well, these are
All of us.
for you guys. Here, just pass them around. You want to just pass them around.
should I just, I don't think they help me enough, so they told me to come with me.
When is that?
I am at 9:40.
Okay, I wouldn't miss this class.
So do we go in before the appointment or sign up?
Okay,
No.
so let's look at the rubric here, the scoring guide. So 2 points, the student correctly determines that candle A will burn out first and provides a valid mathematical explanation.
You should have signed up.
Okay, and provides a valid mathematical explanation that includes the initial heights and the burn rates, right? So you gotta, so they both, you see what I'm saying, like, one of them latched on to the burn rate and one of them latched on to the initial height. You need to explain that it's not that, you know, it's not that simple, that they're both part of the thinking you have to do, right? One point would be, you correctly determine that A is gonna burn out first, but you just don't explain it adequately. Okay, so let's look at some sample responses here. So here's a 2-pointer. So Abby is correct because candle A looks taller, but it burns at a rate of 4 centimeters per hour, where candle B looks shorter, it burns at a rate of 1 centimeter should be per hour, not per second, right? There's a mistake there. Since candle A is 20 centimeters tall, it will burn out in 5 hours, where candle B would take 10 hours. So that's right.
Why is because in quotation marks?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a few, it shouldn't be. And it, obviously that should be hours too. I mean, there's a couple little typos in there. This student correctly identifies that A would burn out first and used both initial heights and burn rates to compute and compare the burnout times. Something else you could do would be to, you know, just to be extra safe, you could say the initial height of candle A is this, and the initial height of candle B is this, but the burn rate of candle A is this, and the burn rate of candle B is this. And then you could even if you can't make an official table here, you could just say, here are the heights after, heights defined for each hour or something, you know, and say candle A, hour 1, hour 2. You see what I'm saying? You could do something like that too, I think, which might be a really safe thing to do. You're better off kind of over answering than under answering, if that makes sense. So look at and here's the one I think it's kind of good to look at, because this looks pretty good, but it's only half credit. Candle A will burn out first because candle A burns 4 centimeters each hour, while candle B burns 1 centimeter each hour. Candle B will burn out while candle A will burn out while candle B still has 5 centimeters left. So that seems pretty good, but the rubric, according to the rubric, they provide correct information, but they didn't give any indication of how that information was, how they got it, right? You see what I'm saying? They didn't show either the equations or the table. Yep.
Did they get it because they said where they started and then?
They didn't, right, I guess they didn't indicate what the initial heights were maybe too, right? So you wanna get both of those in there. And obviously you're not gonna get this answer, but we wanna talk about just in general, you know, why was that not correct? Same thing
So
here.
is it gonna tell us like exactly what things it wants? Like the fact that it
well,
wants both the burn rate and the starting?
This is exactly what it would say, whoops. Right here.
Okay.
The question, all you're gonna see is this part right here.
Okay.
Now, they do in a way, they say, give a mathematical explanation to convince Abby and Julia of your solution. Clearly identify the quantities involved, right? So to me, that's telling you, yeah, you got to identify burn rate and initial height.
Do we have to have like perfect English too?
No, you're not graded on grammar or spelling or anything.
So it could be B/C.
It's an actual person, yeah.
So
Yeah.
what is that? I'm confused as to why. What is that what's domain with the EA and the
Yeah.
target?
Oh, that's not for you guys. Don't worry about that.
Wait,
It's a secret code.
It is, yeah, that's just for graders. It's not, that's telling you, this is just telling you what claim it is and, you know, what SBAC standard it is. You don't even know what it is.
So just pretend we don't see that.
You won't see it.
Okay.
This is where it'll stop for you. This is just the explanation. Yeah. You won't see any of that stuff.
So is the only reason that the one that got 2 points right since it burns at a rate?
Well, because they did both things. They said what the initial heights were. They identified initial heights and burn rate, and then gave the correct answer, right? Because it says they want to know what the quantities are. So that's where this person said, they said it burns at a rate of this and this. And then they told you what the initial heights were too. They didn't say the words initial heights, but they said what they started at, right?
This is like going to be what 35?
Yeah. No, like this. Yeah.
Let's just stop Google. Let's just Google.
Okay, so then next question. She has 3 hours left to film. She lights a new candle type A and a candle type B and then starts filming. In the hours she has left, they ask you a question. Will Abby capture the moment when the candles are exactly the same height? Explain to Abby how you can determine the answer, right? And so what would we do here, probably?
Create two equations.
Yeah, okay, that'd be the best, would be to create two equations,
And
right?
solve the comparison
And then
system.
solve the system, right? Because that's what you're gonna do eventually anyway, right? So that would be,
Where are you?
I'm at the bottom on number 3.
So when you get to the
Or you can look at that page number right there, it says 10.
Yeah.
No, we don't need
Yeah.
those
It's only
steps.
$3.
Those page numbers, they go in order, actually,
Yeah.
yeah, they're sequential.
Just like.
Jesse can pout now. So, and you can just look up here if you want, it's fine. So, explain to Abby how you can determine the answer. Okay, so let's look at this. So, probably the best case scenario would be you just set up the linear system and solve it. But you could also use that table again. You know, go back and say, okay, here's the initial height for one, initial height for the other. Here are the burn rates, right? And just go down, and you'd see that after 3 hours, if you made that table, you'd see that they wouldn't yet be the same height, right? After 4 hours, you'd see that they had passed by each other. So somewhere in there, you know, after, you see what I'm saying, they would have gotten to the point where they would have passed and she would have seen it. But after 3 hours, they hadn't gotten there yet, right? So 2 points, the student correctly answers, no, Abby will not capture the moment, blah, blah, blah. And they support the claim with a mathematically valid argument. So here's one thing, this isn't important to you guys, but to the graders. The underlying content is about systems of linear equations. However, students are not required to set up symbolically a system of linear equations in order to solve this problem. But you guys are hired, you could, right? You could also do that. And then one point obviously would be they get the right answer but don't support it properly, okay? So here are some answers. Now, they don't give any 2-point answers. What's wrong with this one? Well, it looks pretty good. If you know something about math, you could follow what they're doing, right? They're finding out how much the candles have diminished, and then they're subtracting those or adding those to 20 to get, you see what I'm saying? So they're actually getting the heights after a certain number of hours, but they never explained that, right? So they got it right. Student would need to be more explicit about the meaning of the numbers and calculations, right? So all you have to do is just articulate what you're doing, right? But that'd be a good way to do it otherwise, okay? Same thing here. So same kind of thing. They got, what they said is correct, but they just didn't explain how they got there. Okay? So more is better in this case, right? And then finally down here, part 4, you have decided to use functions to help Abby think about the candles. You show her how to represent the height of a candle H as the function of time t using this equation, H equals k plus nt. First, explain to Abby what k and n represent in order to model the different candles. Be specific in your explanation. So they're just asking, what do they mean? What are k and n? So for 2 points, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to identify, what would k obviously be in that situation?
Starting height.
Starting height, and n would be burn rate, yeah. And that's really all you're saying, right? So identifies that k represents the initial height and n represents the burn rate of the candle. That's all they're looking for. What's that? It's not. This, seriously, you guys are, this is, I don't want you to be like going there like so cocky, we're not going to take time, but this is not going to be that hard, guys. It's really not. You're going to be fine. You're going to get.
You know what the reading one's like, the English, that's back is like,
Yeah, for you guys, it'll be fine there too.
do we have to write an essay?
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Do we have to have studied sources, or just write an essay like an essay?
I don't know. If we don't have some sources, they're gonna provide an article for us. And it's not gonna be like a novel.
Okay, so last one. So last one here. So now choose either candle A or candle B to create an equation that will tell Abby the height of the candle at T hours after it's lit. Determine what the numerical values for K and N should be for the candle you choose. Using these values, write an equation. So this is really, all you're doing now is writing an equation, right? So that's no big deal. We either get, you're either gonna get H equals 20 minus 4T or H equals 10 minus T, right? No, it says pick one. So you can just say for the, yeah, that's all it
What happens
says.
if you pick both?
You could, but I think I think in here, I don't know how, they didn't give us the, on this part, they don't show you what the official text box looks like, but you could say, for the tall candle, this is the equation, and for the short candle, this is the equation. But there's a possibility you might get one wrong there, and they say, I mean, you're not going to. It says choose either candle A or candle B, right? So you could say for candle A, this is the, if one is easy to pick it.
Do we need to label, like, whether we're doing candle A or candle B?
You know, I would say candle A, and then, you know, this for candle A is,
equals 20 minus.
yeah, or for candle A, the equation is, you know, H, or, what is it? H equals, right, blah, 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 okay? So that's it for that one.
Is this all one problem?
Yes,
We have to do like 2 of these.
you're gonna do, it depends how long, you either do 1 or 2, depending on how long they are, is my understanding. Okay.
What's a good score on this?
I don't think there's like a set score. I think they look at all, because each year's different, you know, and so they're gonna look at it and say, okay, here's what all the students did, so now we're gonna establish what the cut score is.
So when are we gonna find out how we did?
I don't know yet, and they don't know yet, but hopefully it'll be relatively soon.
So you said we're taking this test for like kind of scholarships?
There's potential for this to help.
Who's giving us the scholarships? Is it just like colleges or?
Well, it could be, I mean, the colleges would have access to this. This is a nationwide test, and so they would have access to this. It's administered through the college board, I believe. Handles all the data, and so there's no guarantee that it's gonna be helpful, but in some cases it might be helpful. And so why not, you know, have that available? Okay. So let's go to number 2. Okay, so number 2.
This one looks fun. I love
Okay, so number 2, same kind of thing. I'm just gonna skip down to the bottom part where actually, in this one, I think they just go right, they give you the answers right as you go through it. Okay, so what about this here? They want, New York State wants to change its system for assigning speeding fines to drivers. The current system allows a judge to assign a fine that is within the ranges shown in this table. So 1 to 10 miles over the speeding limit, etc. You know, it's a pretty big range. Some people have complained that the New York speeding fine system is not fair. Well, that doesn't sound very fair. I mean, there's pretty big variation in there depending on what the judge finds
For
fair.
1 mile,
You could have a $150 fine. Yeah.
wait, but would that be for 10? Like,
No, that's from 1 to 10.
wait, then
Does
how
it,
do
so
they
does it
decide?
depend on where you are and the judge then?
Exactly.
And the judge's mood?
And how
Exactly.
you present
If you
yourself?
went 1
Exactly.
mile over, that is not okay.
Mhm.
Everyone does that.
Judge, like trial.
Okay, so anyway, so here's what you wanna do. Some people have complained that the New York is not fair. The New Drivers Association is recommending a new speeding fine system, based on the Massachusetts system. Okay, so here's what they're recommending.
Seems less fair.
They're recommending 1 to 10 miles per hour over the speeding limit, over the speed limit, it's a $100 flat fee, and for 11 or more, it's that $100 fee plus a $10 for each additional mile per hour over 10, right? In this task, you will analyze the speeding fine systems for both New York and Massachusetts, use data to propose a fairer speeding fine system to New York State, okay? All right, so what do they want you to do? Part A, use the information in Table 2 to plot data points for Massachusetts speeding fines, so that's the fair one, right? Plot a point to represent the fine for driving 5 miles per hour over the speeding limit. Plot additional points for each increment of 5, up to 45. So then, this is pretty straightforward, right? That's just gonna look like that, right? Everything up through 10 is a flat fee, and then they start going up by whatever the slope is. No problem for you guys, right? You're just putting those dots on there. And so a full credit response, which is 1 point, is just getting the table right, okay? Part 2, create an equation to calculate the Massachusetts speeding fine F based on the number of miles per hour M over the speed limit when M is greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 10, right? And so at that point, it's just constant, right? So it would just be F equals 100, right? It's a flat fee, okay, 1 point. Make sense? And you get the math's easy, you got that. So this one I think is easier because there's not much explanation. What about part 3? Create an equation to calculate for Massachusetts when M is greater than 10. Well, that's just gonna be your, 100 plus. Now, this is one where you gotta be a little bit careful, right? Because it's 100 plus 10 times the quantity M minus 10, right? Or if you wanna think about it, if you wanna distribute the 10 and you wanna think about this as a line, you could also go back up here and say, okay, now if I just extend that back, where does it go? It goes back to 0, right? So you could just write that equation by coming up with the initial value, right, plus the rate times M, right? So either way, it's gonna give you just 10M, isn't it? Yeah.
Why is it minus 10 in the?
Well, because they're saying it's 100 plus. Now, what if M were like 11, right? Then you're only gonna add that additional 10 times 1, not 10 times 10, right? Does that make sense? You wouldn't have to write it that way. You could just jump right over to this way if you want to, right here. F equals 10M by just looking at the equation of that line that you get. Because really, at this point, they're just asking you for that part. They just want to know what's the equation of the line when you're greater than 10, right? Well, it's just going to be whatever the equation of that line is. That line, if you extrapolate it back, goes through the origin.
So would F equal 100 plus 10 and not work?
That would not work, because that would be like saying when M is 1, that would tell you that it's gonna be 110, right? So you should always check those by putting, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then the graph below shows data from a sample of actual fines for New York. Use the Connect Line tool to create a piecewise linear model with 2 line segments, one from 1 to 20 and one from 20 to 40. So you would just grab the tool and just drag it over to about there, right? And then grab the tool and drag it up to about there, right? Does that make sense? Just through the centers of those distributions, best fit line stuff. You know how to do that. You've done that a bunch of times. So it looks something like that, right? And there's some wiggle room. You don't expect everybody to get it exactly right. There's actually quite a bit of wiggle room. They said for full credit, the range of acceptable answers, when they're asking for on this one, I think was the first part, right? Yeah, 1 to 20. Oh, there you go. So is near this equation for the first part. Oh no, this equation for the first part and this equation for the second part. But there's a pretty big range of values for the slope. I mean, the slope could be, they allowed a pretty big, right? Okay. How about this? Use your model from part A to create an equation to calculate the speeding fine F based on the number of miles per hour M. So this is the same thing here. So now you're gonna take those lines and just try to come up with, you're just gonna come up with a sample equation, right? So all you're gonna do is take roughly, what are the coordinates of that point and the coordinates of that point, and generate a line from that, right? Find the slope, solve for B, right? In this case, you can actually see where B is, right? And then just come up with whatever that line that you created dictates. There's quite a bit of wiggle room. So, writing an equation with a slope ranging between between 1 and 3, that's pretty big. Between 1 and 3 would work. And a y-intercept ranging between 80 and 100 for the first part. Okay, well if you look at that, that's nothing to be afraid of. 80 and 100. So you're gonna be somewhere between 10, 20, 30. So
somewhere in there, right? And the slope, I mean, that's, 1 is gonna be like that, 3 is gonna be significantly bigger. And that's, that's pretty lenient. For the next part, they wanna know writing an equation. For the second part, the steep part, your slope could range between 13 and 18, and your y-intercept could range between -260 and -120. And they're giving you pretty good, wiggle room there. Okay? The NDA claims that the proposed new model for the New York speeding fine system is fairer than the current system. Do you agree or disagree with the claim? Explain your reasoning using specific examples from the test. Well, the right answer is obviously you agree, right? It is fairer. And you justify the response by citing at least one comparison between the two, right? So, this is one where you gotta communicate, it's a lot fairer, and here's why. So, for example, you could say something like, the current driver who's in the current system, if you're ticketed for speeding by 11 miles per hour, you could be fined $300, or it was really minimal, right? I mean, that just seems really unfair, whereas in the new system, any driver who speeds by 11 miles per hour would pay $112, and a driver who speeds by 30 miles per hour would pay $280. It's fair that drivers who speed by the same amount will pay the same fine, and the fine will increase as the excess speed increases, right? So just something along those lines, right, is all they're looking for. Okay? Make sense? Just take a quick second, look at those, for 5 minutes. You're good, nothing to worry about.
Well, it's your